Hi everyone, and welcome to Understanding by Design, where today we're going to take a look at how you can begin thinking about the way in which you design learning experiences for your students. Experience is not what happens to you. It is what you do with what happens to you, said Aldous Huxley. Huxley is perhaps best known for his novel, Brave New World, set in the dawn of the Industrial Revolution in a time he labels AF, after Ford. Here Huxley anticipates and paints a picture for how the revolutionary technologies of his era will shape the world. Much like today, in an era many label AG, after Google, many paint a picture of how teaching and learning will change as we add more and more technology into our classrooms. In this AG era, powered by mobile devices, where students can access information anytime and anywhere, they paint a picture that makes many feel as if the traditional classroom setting is an anachronism. The role technology plays in our classroom is an ongoing debate, and in this debate there is one thing that we must never forget, and that is that the role of the teacher and the relationships that are developed in a learning community serve as the foundation for a great learning experience. As Huxley so eloquently reminds us, experience is not what happens to you, it is what we do with that experience that counts. And so the question as educators we must really be asking ourselves is, what experience are we bringing to our students in our learning environments? While the role of the traditional classroom holds much value, we do have to ask ourselves what that role looks like. What does that experience look like today? And what can students do with the experience we are providing? Today, when learning can happen in so many different places, at different times, and with so many different individuals, one of the questions we have to ask ourselves is, what does learning look like in these different spaces? What does learning look like at home? What does it look like at school? And where else can learning take place? Perhaps a better question: what is the value added to a student's learning experience during face-to-face time? In answering these questions lies the role of the educator, to design learning experiences that are thoughtful, purposeful, and engaging, that add value to a student's learning experience during face-to-face time. Experiences that allow students to take the content and wisdom of the experience that you share with them to create new experiences for themselves. While there are many different approaches to curriculum design, today we are going to take a look at an approach called Understanding by Design. This model was created by Grant Wiggins and Jay McTighe. The idea behind their approach is to design curriculum backwards. How do you know where you're going, they ask, if you don't know your destination? The Ubd Framework is divided into 3 stages, all of which must align with one another. In the first stage, we ask ourselves, what do we want students to know? At the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, and at the end of the course, what do we want them to leave with? Here we ask ourselves what we want students to know, understand, and most importantly, what do we want them to be able to do? These ideas form the basis of your essential questions that will guide you and your students through the learning experience. In stage 2, we take a look at the assessment evidence that we can collect to tell us if we were successful in achieving the goals we outlined in stage 1. Oftentimes, when we think of the word assessment, we immediately think testing. While listening to my friend and fellow educator Steve Bambury present on assessment for learning, he showed this slide. And so if we look at the root of the word assessment here, we can see that it actually means learning side by side. And I don't know about you, but when I heard that, it really changed the way I felt, thought, and looked at the word assessment, or what assessment meant in my classroom. Being able to learn side by side is perhaps the greatest value we can give our students in the learning experience, and one that is greatly enhanced with digital tools in the classroom. Technology does not replace our role, it empowers our role to use the tools we have to think about assessment and many other things in a whole new light. We'll talk about assessment later in the course, but for now let's think about this. Traditionally, assessment has always been multiple choice exams, essays, perhaps a presentation at the end of the course. But now that our students have access to mobile devices, now that in their very own pockets, they have the power to create media, publish books, collaborate with others beyond the 4 walls of the classroom, and engage with an authentic audience, given these new dynamics, what types of assessment opportunities does this create? In the final stage of the UBD model, We plan our day-to-day. We know what we want our students to be able to do. We know how we are going to assess them. But what are we going to be doing day-to-day to support them in this process? Here, Wiggins and McTighe specifically point out that when working with teaching content or skills, we must focus on 3 areas: transfer, meaning-making, and acquisition. TMA. This is where the digital tools can really play an integral role. We often see devices as a distraction in the classroom, but when we teach our students the skills that they need to enhance their learning experience, to extend what they are already doing, to make meaning and connections not just across the course, but ultimately the entire curriculum, we will be teaching them to use technology in meaningful ways. It is here and through this process that the teacher can truly embrace their role as a facilitator of meaning-making and learning. Learning today is no longer restricted to the 4 walls of the classroom. With the iPads in each student's hands, learning is mobile, and students can play a much greater, much more active role in the learning process. Ultimately, as Huxley says, taking that experience, in this case the learning experience, and being able to do anything and everything with it. Being able to really apply it in the field, in meaningful ways, and ultimately using the experiences and skills they've gained like critical thinking, creativity, communication, and collaboration, ultimately in the service of community. One of the guiding essential questions of this course is how can we challenge one another to continue to discover, innovate, and share? One of the ways in which we can do this is by taking the ideas we are discovering and applying them, and then sharing our successes and failures back with one another. As you begin to think about curriculum design and development, take a look at the UBD template included in this course. What learning experiences will you provide for your students? What do you want them to be able to do at the end of the day, the week, the month, or the course? And how will you help them get there? I now invite you to join Beth Holland and I. Beth Holland is a former teacher and now an instructor with EdTech Teacher. We're going to be talking about the Understanding by Design model and why we think it's a great model to use as you think about integrating technology in your classroom and how it can help you really think about using technology to redefine what you're doing, not just substitute what you're doing. Thank you for joining me, and we look forward to hearing from you and you sharing your ideas about how you've been using the different tools and ideas that we're sharing in this course. Thank you.